Have you ever avoided a tough conversation only to find the issue grew bigger because you avoided it? Well, you're not alone. In this episode, we dive into the art of difficult conversations and how they build, not break, relationships. Discover why your body's signals matter during these moments of conflict, how to speak your truth without losing yourself, and why trust is built through having these types of tough conversations, not avoiding them. Whether you're a natural harmonizer or someone who always looks for the exit when things get rough, this episode offers practical wisdom for showing up authentically when tensions rise. Join us to transform how you navigate conflict and create deeper connections through conscious communication. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romaine.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Kim Romaine, joined as always by my lovely co-host.
That's me, Louise Neal.
Yay, Louise. Louise, you have a new headset on since our last recording.
Isn't it fun? It's pink for those of you who aren't watching. And I love it because it brings a little, little color into my life.
And it looks very old school, which I love too.
I know, right? It's like the whole design. Yeah, I'm liking it.
Cool. Reminds me of French class.
Ooh, there's a story there.
Not about, it just reminds me of it was just a visceral, it was like, oh yeah, you put the muffs on. Anyway, Louise, what are we celebrating this week?
You know what? You and I are celebrating something that's happened recently. You're like, are we? We are. We celebrated our birthdays recently.
Oh yeah. Well, it is March. It is it feels like mine was 900 years ago. Yeah. We both had birthdays this month. We're little fishy fishes. Even though by the time this comes out, it will be Aries season. So the fish will have flown.
Are we out of some retrograde now?
Oh no, sweetheart, we're just getting started.
Oh, dear Lord.
So yeah, so this is coming out on March 25th. When we record this, we are already in Venus retrograde, getting ready to go into Mercury retrograde. But first we have a lunar eclipse, which has some crunchiness around that. That's in Virgo. And then we have at the end of March, we have a solar eclipse. So lovely eclipse season. And then on April 7th, we go out of Mercury retrograde, and April 12th, we go out of Venus retrograde, but the shadows last until the beginning of May. So, fun times.
Whew.
And I'm not even an astrologer. It's just somebody who pays attention to this stuff.
That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot. Oh, and at the end of the month, I think Neptune goes into Aries as well, which only happens once every 18 years. So,
okay. I barely know what any of those things mean, other than you use the word crunchy. I know what that means. I know what that feels like. Yeah. but I'm not celebrating the crunchiness. I'm celebrating birthdays.
Yeah.
And why I want to celebrate my birthday a little bit differently this year. It's not a big significant number. It doesn't end in a 5 or end in a 0. Starts with a 5. I'm starting to get used to that. Um, but for a long time in my life, I didn't like birthdays. Like, I hated them. It was a struggle. I didn't want the day to come. I didn't want to celebrate. I didn't want anybody to do anything at all. And now that I'm in my no fuck 50s, I
Hmm.
care a little bit less about it, and maybe I care differently about my birthday. And then it is something I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate it on my own still, but I do want to celebrate it. Um, and so I'm celebrating, as weird as that is. But it's really in how I'm approaching these things. These, I don't know, what used to be milestones for me are just like now barely pebbles.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm the opposite.
I know, we've talked about this before. And you're like, party!
Yeah, I'm like, where's the fucking party? And I met my husband on March 2nd. That's our date anniversary. My birthday is March 5th. His birthday is March 8th. So I'm sandwiched in between these two other celebrations. And so mine just kind of gets lumped in there and has for the past 18 years. And I'm like, huh, I'd like a celebration. And I did. I'm double nickels now. Shh, what the fuck? Like, how'd that happen? But like, nothing happened. I got my nails done on my birthday. I took a half day off from work. I'm the boss. So, like, I can't get mad at me. And then the next day, I took the whole day off to clean my office. But that felt really good. That was like, it wasn't just a cleaning. It was like everything came off the shelves and out of the cabinets and out of the drawers, and everything got not just cleaned, but cleansed, energetically cleansed, and then reorganized and reset. And yeah, it feels really good in here, and it felt like the right time to do it. So yeah, but I still want my party, man. I'm like, pay attention to me.
So,
But yeah, yeah,
yeah. So what are you celebrating other than your double nickels?
my double nickels.
I like that.
Um, uh, I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating space. And when I say that, I mean the space to create, the space to speak, the space to be, the space to make decisions, like creating space. So having space. Now, space freaked me out at the beginning of the month when I looked at my calendar and went, "Oh my god, I have nothing on there." Like, that's really scary.
There's a lot of
There's
space.
That's a lot more space than I've seen in a long time. And that gets, as a business owner, that gets really scary to have that much space. And then I realized that space was there for a reason. That space was there to allow me to tap into the things that I was taking for granted and really be with the other aspects of me that I sometimes rush through. And yeah, so I've been having space to think and space to write, and not write for content reasons, like write to for me. Um, I've had this journal that I use, and not a journal as in like a thought journal. I have that separate, but sitting on my desk, I've had a journal, and I or a notebook, and I take notes when I'm on calls, or I take notes when a thought comes to me, or whatever. I used to use that notebook as a way to keep my brain clear and kind of help me remember, just like what I do with many of my clients. It's like, okay, but let's circle back to what we're actually looking at, right? Like, let's circle back. What is the point of this? What do we actually want to do? And I lose track of that because I move so fast. Manny Gen energy, woo! And I mean, you're Manny Gen too, and you move fast in a different way, right? It looks different for the two of us. And so when I move fast, I don't always, well, I take time to reflect. I also do that quickly. It's like, okay, moving in, it's like, yep, did that thing. I'm aware of that thing. I've taken time for that thing, which is very different than when I do that thing with space. And so I'm celebrating the space because the space has given me opportunities to process things on a different level. So thanks for giving me the space for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we hit record today, we were having a conversation, a really good conversation about a lot of different things. But one of the things we were having a conversation about is having hard conversations and what happens when we're in conversations that don't always feel good. I'd love to, if you're up for it, I'd love to explore a little bit more of that today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really interesting as our you and me, our
Mhm.
relationship grows, and because we're not just biz besties, right? We're friends too. And so you and I have had some really what I would consider tough conversations um, that have come with more ease than past tough conversations have. And so I I do love this because it's within these tough conversations that we actually have an opportunity to like build relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get to practice with each other in a way that I air quotes here, practice with my husband, but he's really the only other person that I've had the freedom to say, I'm not going to get this right. I'm probably going to show up as an asshole sometimes. I'm really sorry about that. And how do we work through it? Because the most important thing is that we work through it
Mm-hmm.
and that we can bring ourselves to the table however we are. And I want to speak into how much trust has had to be built to get us to that place, but beyond trust of each other, because right, that trust had to be built. We had to learn how to trust ourselves in those hard conversations. It's so interesting that we're like, I don't think the conversation that we were having was a hard conversation, but we were
I
talking
don't
about.
either. I know. But it reminded me, like, as we were talking before the
Yeah.
podcast, it really reminded me of like some of the tough conversations I know you and I have had
Yep.
because it like when we're in it, like it feels tough and it's crunchy and we're stumbling for words because we're not sure what to say and we want to filter what we're saying but we don't because maybe we have like there's all of these things that go on. And so I know in the past we have had some tough conversations and yet like we get through them like we're on the other side. And and yet we didn't know that the very first time we had a conversation that was tough.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think I remember our very first like tough conversation, and I was terrified. I was terrified because when you have tough conversations with somebody that you love and adore, it's like, but is this the end? Like, is this a
Right.
breaking point in the relationship? Because that's how tough. I mean, I remember our first tough conversation. It was loaded from both sides. And it wasn't like, I don't think either of us was angry with the other one. I don't remember ever that. But yeah. I mean, the way that I remember it was a place of misalignment and being really nice to each other. And then getting to a point of being like, but it's not working.
So I
Not
think,
that the
yeah,
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Not that the friendship wasn't working, but it was scary that like with these other things that we had brought into our friendship, what could those have been enough to have pulled our friendship apart was my fear.
Yes. And sometimes those conversations are about the friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so it's really interesting because we do have to address these things that start to feel, right, crunchy. They start to feel misaligned. And yet my I'm learning so much. You said about practicing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having a space, having people in your life where you actually get to practice tough conversations is something I didn't have for a really long time. Um, Mostly because I'm a harmonizer, and
Mm-hmm.
harmonizers don't have tough conversations. Um, at least that's what I was brought up to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting, yeah, to feel the fear and do it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to trust in the outcome before we know the outcome. Like we have to trust in that it's going to turn out how it's meant to turn out, regardless of how it turns out.
Yeah. Well, I don't think most of us were ever taught how to really have hard conversations. I mean, I know in our generation, like when I think about our parents, we didn't witness hard conversations going well.
Oh, and I was going to say, I witnessed hard conversations. I'm glad you
No,
put that caveat on the end.
we did not witness them going well.
Right, right.
Right? We
Yeah.
witnessed them, and that's where like I know with Danny, with my husband and I, his when we would initially have these tough conversations, the way I reacted or responded to it, he was like, that I did not grow up with these things in the house. It is not okay to have like a heightened conversation. That's a bad thing. And I'm like, what if it's not a bad thing to have a heightened conversation so long as there is a resolution and we work through it, right? Because so I had a heightened conversation with a colleague, with somebody that I was working with last week. And it was very uncomfortable for both of us. We were both clearly triggered by the conversation. And my natural instinct is to bolt, is to be like, fuck it, I'm out. This is too hard. Like, this isn't meant to be, right? Find the ease. The ease is the door. But that wasn't like it did it if that, and I'm sure it was a fleeting thought that I had because I felt it in my body, but I don't remember actively thinking that. Instead, what I said was, I think it's really important that we have the hard conversation. I'd really appreciate it if we could continue having this conversation and working through this. And the way the conversation ended was we both thanked each other for it, right? There was still more to process on the backside for sure. But I felt heard. I believe the other person felt heard. I hope they did. And it got to a point where we could disengage from the conversation without us both being heightened. That's the place where we didn't see that modeled, where people had tough conversations, even if they get heightened. Now, neither of us were yelling at each other in that situation, but it was heightened, where it ends well. And I think you and I coming into this relationship together, when we had to have hard conversations with each other, I know for me, the fear was, is this going to end well? And then once we did it a few times, I'm like, oh, we can do this. We don't, thankfully, it's not like it happens all the time, but when it happens, I'm not terrified anymore. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm going to lose Louise.
Right. Well, I even think in that you and I are having a conversation about something that's not so tough because it hasn't built up, or it diffuses the minute, right? One person is triggered.
Mhm.
Like we start to do that. And so the conversation, I think, never ends up being like what I would consider hard.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in heightened. I would say that some of the conversations are still hard because we're dealing with each other, like love between two people, caring, compassion, respect between two people. And sometimes we want to bring something to the other person's attention that is is out of a place of love and is not easy to say, right?
Yes. Yes.
You're like, I'm just taking it in, Kim, whatever.
It's true though. Like it is. But I think though for me is that um I know that we are going to be respectful. I know that we're going to be honest. Like it's like we've created these rules
Mhm.
around our conversations, kind of like we haven't sat down and said, here's the rules of engagement, but we've created these norms for us where we we are able to have the conversation and know that it's it's still going to turn out okay in some way. We're going to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we did a little bit with rules of engagement when we had our retreat last year, when it was you and I on our retreat last year. One of the first things we said was like, okay, what are the rules of engagement for the weekend? Like what's okay, what's not okay? And we were both very well aligned with what we said. I'm curious when we think about, because I know when it before I started practicing with you with other people, um, tough conversations were hard for me in the workplace, with clients, with right in with family members. Like I said, my I look for ease, and ease is sometimes the door. And right, very often I'm like, where's the closest exit? What what are some of the things that are helpful? We like rules of engagement are helpful, ideally spoken. What else is helpful when having that you've recognized in terms of having hard conversations?
Well, I think, the work that you and I have done and kind of understanding a bit more of like my human design and like who I am. And, I mentioned the word harmonizer earlier. That's my
Mhm.
Clifton strength, right? And so I have these words and I have this insight or this self-awareness to say like, what is my default? And and understanding that my default is actually not how I want to be showing up currently in the moment. And that I have a misalignment with how I'm showing up and who I want to be in those situations. And I think like some of that knowledge has been really helpful to get me to a place of consciously making different choices in tough conversations. And what that is like my default is to like, I just shut down.
Mhm.
Like, I just shut down. I don't have anything to say. I don't want it to go anywhere. I will just like shut down and I will just take it all on, whatever the other person is saying or doing. And I feel like it's my obligation in that conversation to generally agree or come to some kind of harmonious outcome. So it's my job to make it harmonious.
Mhm.
That's not my job, right? My job is to express how I'm feeling. My job is to be able to, right, have a really kind and clear conversation about my own views and my own feelings and my own thoughts. And this is in my business, right? This is how I was in corporate. This is who I was in relationships. And so I think the knowing right? And the work that you have helped me do through your strengthscapes and all of that have really given me some tools to say, okay, well, this is where I want to, this is who I really want to be in those situations. What do I need to do or say a little bit differently? So I'm working towards that. I'm not getting it right every time, but I'm certainly working towards that often.
Yeah. It's so interesting because right, to continue using you as as an example, um, when we looked at all these different aspects of you, right, the harmonizer is who you most identified with when we were talking. It's like, that's my role. That's who I am. And when we started peeling back the layers and actually looking at who you're designed to be, right? It's this person with this glorious, intuitive, direct voice, this kind voice, this voice that guides others. And that place of, oh, it's not my job. I've conditioned myself, and others have helped me do that, to be in this place where I feel that. And yet there's the positive, there's the place that I feel good that I can be a harmonizer. I feel good that I can bring that energy into a room. And there's some other times where I really feel like, because I'm doing that, I've lost my voice. I've lost my, and we were talking about this with identity, I've lost my identity in this space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But we're more than one thing.
Well, 100% we are. Yeah.
Right? And so it's really interesting because I don't always have to be the harmonizer in all situations. I have this whole tickle trunk full of other parts of me, right? That I can bring forward. And and that's so interesting because then that starts to play with that word authenticity, right? And it's like, ooh, am I being authentic when I'm in this situation? If I'm not a harmonizer, am I really like being me? And it's like, hell yeah, because I have all of these versions of myself that are still me. I have all of these other parts of me that
Mm-hmm.
can also have a voice and that can also speak into the moment or speak into the crunchiness. And I'm still a harmonizer, right? It's just what else am I? Because we're not just one thing.
Yeah. We have this whole closet of clothes,
Yeah, yeah.
all the sweaters,
All the sweaters. Some are
all the sweaters.
itchy, some are comfy.
Yeah.
How about for you, Kim? Like when you think about, I want I want to talk a little bit too, like just about like that that growth piece, that self-awareness that you have now to say like that staying in the conversation is actually more about who you want to be. But like how did you get there to know that about yourself?
I mean, much along the same way that you had just shared, it's the understanding that, yeah, there are some times we're getting to safety, which, right, that's what the door gives me, that exit gives me, is safety. There are some times where safety is the best thing for me, because I won't be able to be in a place where I'm being self-directed, right? I will be taken over by somebody else's energy. That is a time where it is not okay for me to um, lean into the reaction. And I know now what that feels like in my body, right? So the conversation I was having last week is a great example. I felt something in my body change when this person said something that triggered me. I recognized it as a trigger. I spoke to that trigger, right? I gave it a voice. That then triggered the other person, unfortunately. But I knew what was happening versus being overtaken by the trigger itself. But it was because I recognized what the feeling was. I could feel it in my body. And it was a feeling that I'm very aware of. So for those of you who do know human design, I have a undefined heart or an undefined ego same spot in our design charts, 2 different names. We're moving away from ego and moving towards heart. But I had this undefined center. I grew up with a very dogmatic father who has a defined ego. And I know what that defined ego feels like to me. Now, whether or not this person I was talking with last week has one or not, I have no idea. Don't know their design at all. I just know that it felt the same way as when I was being chastised as a child. And I had 2 initial reactions. One was to bolt and get to safety because I knew what was coming next because there was some abuse when I was a child. And so, right, that's in our DNA and we want to keep that child safe. The other was that aspect of me that has grown over the years, which is fuck you. Like you can't do that to me. I knew neither were the response I wanted. I knew both of those were visceral, non-aligned reactions that would have left the situation, the conversation, where I afterwards would have been like, oh, I did not like how I showed up there. That didn't feel good to me. So I was able to take a breath, recenter myself, and go back into it and say, I recognize what you just said triggered me. I'm having a bad response to what you just said, not saying you said it intentionally, right? Also putting back to them that I recognized this was on me. And then I tried to carry on the conversation from there. Escalated again. Words were said to me that then put me back in that response place, but I had faster access to it because I'd already done it once in this conversation. And I took another deep breath and I was like, look, again, I recognize this isn't what I want to be doing. I don't want to be in reactionary mode. I want to try to understand where this individual was coming from and or get to the outcome that we were agreed upon for what the purpose of the conversation was. And I think that part, right? So there's 2 parts that I want to kind of underline here. One is know yourself really, really well. So one aspect of it, right, is the know thyself in terms of what's your design, what's your, like, whatever speaks to you so that you actually understand what's in your closet and what all those things are, right? Know thyself. Also, and part 2 of that first part is know thyself in terms of your body. Your body's giving you signals all the time. And so when you feel yourself start to go into something, see if you can create some space, right? I was celebrating space at the beginning. Create some space where you're not holding on to that reaction, where you're able to say, I get it, that's there, but I'm not currently in danger. I can set that aside for right now. And then allow yourself to be really present, which is really hard in that moment, right? When you're really present, you can make a different choice. Being really present was, I'm in this conversation for a reason. What is that reason and what is the outcome? And has that outcome changed? Do I now want a different outcome? Right? It could have devolved into this other conversation that we didn't need to have. But instead, for me, I was like, I want to go back. And to the other person's credit, they wanted to go back to that as well. Like, we are here for a reason. And so we were able to agree on that and move forward. So yeah, I think there's a lot of tools that help me, but I had to learn those over time. And practice in many different situations. What is true for me and and giving myself credit for, like, being a human in that situation, in any situation. Like, I matter in that situation. That's right. That's my tape. That's my history of, I don't matter. I can go away. It doesn't matter. I'll deal with it later, versus, oh no, I matter and I'm actually, and I don't have to matter so much. I'm telling them to go fuck themselves. Like, I don't need to go that. Don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it just having like sometimes we know we're going to have tough conversations. Sometimes we know that because of the topic, we know that because of the person, like we have some history. So, like understanding that too about your situation, I think is super important as well. Like it brings more awareness to like could I be triggered in this situation or have I had like is this a tough conversation? You kind of like have some established kind of well sort of rules of engagement but at least the purpose of a conversation that you can go back to when things start to go sideways but also like I think you made another point too is that like we are all human and we might not get it right and guess
For sure.
what 99% of the time we get to have that conversation again either directly in the moment to say hey like can we reset like that that's not who I am or that didn't come out right or let me try again because I feel like we're misaligned. Like you get to say those things, right? Or you get to come back. You get to say, "Hey, I'm a little bit, right? I'm too emotional. I can't hear what you're saying. I can't be present." Um but I can be present in another time. Can we come back to having this conversation? Like those are all options to be able to do these tough conversations. The important thing is like let's be having the tough conversations.
Oh my gosh. I feel like if we could have tough conversations and have them end well, and I don't mean end well like everybody's happy, because like, look, I ended that conversation. Like I said, I still had a lot of processing to do. I wasn't happy, and we had it. We got through it. We learned something about ourselves and each other, hopefully, in the process. And if we could learn to do that as as a species, right? If we could learn to do that, imagine what the world would be like. Just, I mean, yeah, it's mind-boggling to think about how different things could be if we were able to, again, not acquiesce, not say, so just by coming back to somebody and saying, I didn't love how I showed up in that conversation doesn't mean, by the way, I'm wrong or you're right.
100%.
Right? Like, that's not what we're saying.
Right. Right. But tough conversations though, and I think this is maybe where humanity goes sideways sometimes is that it is about being right or wrong.
Yep.
It's like
Ego.
right? When we have different opinions or we have like different perspectives and we come together and we try to share that, it turns into this, I'm right, you're wrong. My view is right, your view is wrong. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that's not a tough conversation. That's just a fucking argument.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's right. That's the shadow side, the toxic side of that defined ego, the defined heart that I was talking about. Right? When that is when it is being used quote unquote correctly, when it's being used in its highest form. A defined heart, a defined ego is beautiful. I have several clients who have it and I'm like, wow, had I not known, like they had me understand for the first time that that's a really good beautiful thing.
Mm.
Because I grew up thinking that means you're an asshole. Like, and it doesn't. So all of you who have defined egos, defined hearts, know that I see you, I love you, I appreciate you. You don't need to be an asshole, but you can be when like, but so can I, and I don't have one. So
Sure.
we can all be
We can
assholes.
all be assholes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's really about like if you want to be an asshole then like I guess go ahead and do that. But recognize that you're making that choice to be that
I'm
way.
sitting here going, who's walking through the world going, I choose to be an asshole, and so I'm going to go listen to the Empowered and Embodied show. Like, that's the part I started laughing. I'm like, I
Oh, there's
somehow
our listeners. Like, there's going to be a clip that's made into a meme that hits social media that says something about being an asshole, and then there's backlash. And who knows what happens? We get banned from Facebook. Who
oh, who
knows?
cares? Whatever. Uh, speaking of assholes, uh, all right, we're devolving. So, Louise, what are some of the takeaways, those golden nuggets from our conversation, from this conversation today? Because we had others, but this conversation today.
I'm going to go back to kind of what you said at the beginning around trust. And it's great when we can have conversations with people we trust. Those are hard and easier to have, although they're still hard to have. It's it's how do we build trust so that we can have these tough conversations? And it's like, ooh, we have to have the tough conversations to build trust. Like that's the catch 22 of it all, right? And I wanted to just kind of underline and highlight that, we're talking about something that is like horse, cart, horse. Like
Chicken, egg, chicken. Yeah.
right. Like it's tough to know where to start. We just have to start.
Mm-hmm.
We have to trust in ourselves enough to be a little bit vulnerable, to know that, right, in a safe situation, let's just
Mm-hmm.
underline that too,
Yep.
that that we can do tough things with people we don't trust, and it
Mm-hmm.
it will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely underline the right. If there is any part of your intuition telling you that any part of the conversation or being with an individual or group of individuals is not safe, please use my exit strategy. Right, find the
Find
nearest
the
exit. Yeah, and that comes with ease. Or get help to do that, right, if you can't.
sure.
And my former attorney days of working in the abuse and neglect court is like all of the ways that you need to be safe. So please be safe.
Absolutely.
Um, I want to go back to something that you had said about like we make mistakes. So we're talking about peeling back the layers of what's worked for us in terms of leaning into having hard conversations and learning how to have hard conversations in a way that doesn't leave either party or parties destroyed. Right? Because we can have hard conversations and come in guns blazing, barrels, whatever, doing the things that they do. I don't know what I'm
I
trying to
don't
say,
know
but
what that saying is, but yes, guns
you know,
blazing.
guns
Sure.
blazing. We can come in really hot and heavy and like take over a hard conversation. But that goes back to what I said right towards the beginning is it was not modeled for us to have hard conversations that end well. And I think that ending well also means we're going to make mistakes while we're trying to get them to end well. We do trigger each other. Look, we're human beings and we only understand our own, no matter how close we are with somebody else, we really only understand our perspective in the world. We share perspectives, right? We can have conversations where we share perspectives and share thoughts and argue and disagree and all of these things. But we're only ever seeing it through our perspective, our lens. So we will inadvertently, as well as vertently, I don't know if that's the word, but intentionally trigger people. And more often than not, it is inadvertent. We don't mean it. And having the conversation, once that's happened, once the conversation gets derailed, stopping, acknowledging it, having that hard conversation is what allows us to move forward and get to whatever purpose it is that we're in that conversation or in that relationship. Right. And we need to be able to make those mistakes with grace for ourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that I think grace for ourselves and grace for others. And it does go back to that place of seeing ourselves and others as human beings, because we are flawed and we're going to make a lot of mistakes, a lot of them. And the sooner we get okay with that and learn how to have these conversations where we don't create more harm for ourselves or somebody else in the process, the better off humanity is going to be, man. I really believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we have to practice. We have to be practicing this. We have to be practicing this. I think it's a key ingredient to kindness, right?
Yeah.
These tough conversations are actually, how are we kind to one another, because we're having the tough conversations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Louise, where are you having conversations with people these days?
Ooh, I'm having lots of fantastic conversations on LinkedIn these days, which I absolutely love, mostly about menopause and perimenopause and how it really is impacting us in ways we never imagined. And the conversations are amazing. The people I'm connecting with are amazing. But yeah, if you want to have those kinds of conversations, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you talk about like impacting us in ways we didn't know or expect, like yes, individually, but the conversations I see you having, you're really talking about how it's impacting collectively and in
Oh,
communities and in
absolutely.
workplaces. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, it's so entwined and we can't separate it. It's yeah, it is all one conversation to be having. Absolutely. Yep. How about you, Kim? Where are you having conversations these days?
I'm having lots of conversations all over the place. And one of my favorite places to have conversations is inside the Rising Visionaries. You came and were part of a conversation
Did.
recently. Yeah. I love the conversations we have in there. I do bring the woo 100%. I bring the woo. And then the conversations really lead to these spaces of how are we finding ease, finding that place of embodiment and alignment and simplicity and expansion. By the way, that spells ease, just in case you didn't find your way there. Um, the when we find ease so we can create the impact that we are meant to make in the world, in a way that doesn't come without challenges, but it doesn't feel shitty. like, like we get to have some peace of mind while we're going through it. And yeah, we talk about a lot of juicy stuff inside of the Rising Visionaries. So I love having those conversations about, right, the impact that we're making and how we're making it and how we come back to ourselves and therefore in support of the collective as well. So yeah,
Love it.
good
Love
stuff. Louise, thank you for this conversation about conversations.
Yes, it wasn't hard at all. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. Take care.
We'll see you later.
Bye for now. And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.